up to live stream. It's preparing. Oh, it's saying video is unavailable. It's private. It's telling me to go home. Okay. So that's not going to work today. So that might be a settings issue. So we're going to leave that for now because we've got the recording on. So let's just go with that for now. Can't win them all. But what we can do right now, and I've got great pleasure in doing, is welcome John from DigiLocal, and John's going to talk to us about building your career through volunteering. So over to you, John.
Excellent. Well, hopefully it will be more of a conversation than me just talking at you for 2 hours, because let's do that. Hopefully you've got my screen up.
Yeah, it looks good. It's all looking
Okay.
good.
So career building through volunteering. I'm John. Thank you for the introduction, Mariam. I run a small charity in Bristol called DigiLocal, and we make extensive use of volunteers, supporting them in running coding clubs for young people. And I'll say a little bit more about that later as part of the sort of talk thing. What I would say is that this is not a lecture. It's not a presentation. I would like you to comment. Mariam's going to watch the chat and the little put your hand up thing. So if you have a question or a comment that you'd like clarified, or you'd like to challenge me, something I says doesn't match your experience, please do that straight away as it comes up. Stick it into the chat, raise your hand, get our attention. Because I'd like to learn from you as much as hopefully sharing some of my experience and thoughts from my background. So if you've got a question, dive in. We've got about 2 hours, which is loads of time. There is a bit of an interactive session in the middle just to get people's brains working again if everybody starts to go to sleep. And then there's a 15-minute break just for comfort stop. And then we'll wrap everything up, hopefully by 8:30, maybe a little bit early, see how things go. So career building through volunteering. Why should you volunteer? Well, because it's the right thing to do. And I think that's my starting point, is if you're thinking about volunteering, you should be coming at it from the perspective of it's the right thing to do to give your time freely to support other people. There can also be benefits to yourself, and an organization called STEM Ambassadors, STEM Learning, did some research actually quite a few years ago now, but it was a big piece of work with all of their over 10,000 STEM, science, technology, engineering and math ambassadors. And they looked at these 4 areas along with some others. But what you'll notice is the two highest areas are around personal achievement and reward and satisfaction. And I think it's important that you do it because you feel it's the right thing to do. You want to help the group that you're volunteering with. I'm going to be talking mostly about volunteering in a coding / technology context, code clubs, tech clubs, that kind of stuff. But actually, a lot of what I talk about is equally valid if you're volunteering in a care setting or an outdoors experience setting, or just in your local community helping with Meals on Wheels or whatever it happens to be. The benefits that you can take away from your volunteering activity can enhance your career, whether you're looking at your first job straight out of school, whether you're looking at a career change because you've had one career and you want to move on to something different, or because life circumstance means that you're now going for your first job later on in life, but you haven't worked in the UK before that. So volunteering is a really good way of helping to build your employability and your career depth and strength, but that is not why you should do it. If you go into volunteering because you want to land that job with Google, probably isn't the best way of doing it. So with all of that out of the way, who am I? Why should you listen to me? So clearly I am not a person of color and I'm not a female. So why should you listen to anything I have to say about volunteering? My experience is going to be very different to yours, both personally and professionally. To start with, I've been volunteering since I was about 16 years old. So I won't say when that was, but I've been doing it pretty much all of my adult life. Very conscious that I have benefited from white male privilege and seeking ways to help those that don't have some of those advantages and privileges. And volunteering is a great way to do that, give other people the benefit of some of my background experience, give them opportunities that maybe I had the advantage of that they don't. And it does give you, a good feeling about helping others. So I've been doing it a while. So I've seen lots of different situations, lots of different circumstances. And over the years, whilst I have never got a job directly from my volunteering has certainly helped when I was applying for different roles and positions for the reasons I'll go into the rest of this sort of session. I've also been working in the tech sector for about 20 plus years. We're based in Bristol. Before that, I was in Plymouth. I started in mechanical engineering, then worked for a couple of universities in the area on various innovation projects, usually between the small sort of high-tech companies and the larger manufacturers. So I've seen lots of different elements of technology, software, microelectronics, high-tech, and then for about 4-5 years before my current role with the charity, I was running a tech network in Bristol for the high-tech sector, with conferences on various software languages. I'm not a software developer by background profession, but you pick a lot of this stuff up talking to the industry. You also get a bit of a feel for some of the challenges those particularly small and mid-sized companies face when it comes to skills, volunteering, young people, engaging the workforce, that kind of stuff. And hopefully my volunteering experience, my tech experience, informs what we're going to talk about today and how to benefit from one, transferring it into the other. I'm also an employer of staff. So we have, I have a coordinator at the charity. For any small, medium-sized firm, employing people is pretty scary because it's a large financial liability, outlay, commitment to a person. It's probably, certainly for us, it's our largest budget line. We spend more on our staff than anything else as a single thing. So it's quite an important decision to make. And when you're faced with recruiting someone or taking a new member of staff on, you want to be as confident as you can be that they will contribute to the organization, help develop the organization as a group of people, bring different experiences and backgrounds and knowledge into the organization, and help generally grow what it is that business, charity, organization does. And getting the wrong person can be very dangerous because it can lead to conflict. It can take organizations in the wrong direction they don't want to go in. So picking the right person is very important. And I would say that volunteering is a good way of broadening your CV from a simple job listing. Obviously, you will always, or your future employers will use references to validate what you say in your CV. But a lot of commercial firms these days will only give start and finish dates of employment. They won't say anything else about how you got on, how you fitted in, what you brought, what you developed, how you developed as a person. Partly out of fear of litigation if they say you're fantastic, you turn out not to be, but also partly out of fear that if they say something bad about you and you don't get the job, you then challenge them later in court. So a lot will just say, we employed them from this date to that date, off you go. Charities are often a lot more willing to share information about how a person behaved in a role. We've certainly had volunteers that have used their time at DigiLocal when they're going either for university applications or job applications. And I'm always very happy to say, this is who they were, this is where they volunteered. Quite often in our situation,
all
I
of
know
these things, all of those components add different layers.
Oh, it's okay. Yeah, so I'm always very happy to flesh out that reference for the volunteers, because I know what they get up to, and it's a much safer, it's more comfortable, it's a lot friendlier sometimes than commercial activity. And we've got about 60 volunteers through our DigiLocal club, so I know what it's like to be a volunteer. I know what it's like having volunteers, and our volunteers are great at coming back with ideas and suggestions and feedback. So hopefully I've got a bit of experience in the field. I certainly wouldn't call myself an expert, but I'm hoping that that experience and background will help you in your career building. So on to the important bit. How does volunteering build your career? Or how can volunteering build your career? So I think there are 3 key areas where volunteering can enhance your CV or career, or in some places almost replace it, particularly if you're new to a sector or to work. And the first is demonstrable experience. And that's quite a big one. It's probably the most benefit you'll get out of volunteering is demonstrable experience. You can also use your volunteering to develop your skills, both hard, i.e. technical skills, and I would argue more importantly, your soft skills, so your people skills, teamwork, collaboration, leadership, that kind of stuff. You can also use it, absolutely, for networking. You will meet amazing individuals in your volunteering, both the other volunteers and sometimes the people you are supporting through your volunteering. Most of our clubs, or all of our clubs, deal with young people, but they have parents, many of whom work for quite interesting companies. If you're volunteering with adults, they may work in quite interesting companies, or they may have relatives, parents, offspring in interesting companies. And that networking can be a way to find out about opportunities that you wouldn't otherwise be aware of, because a lot of jobs don't make it to LinkedIn or the job agencies until companies have an idea of who they're after. And that happens a lot, particularly in the more tightly integrated communities like tech often is. People know who other people are, and a lot of people will move between firms in a region, and people start to get to recognize faces, and they know that, oh, that's a good person, I've seen them around. So that kind of soft networking can be done through volunteering, but it comes with a few caveats that, again, we'll touch on at the end after we have a bit of a play. So I think this is, for a lot of people, the catch-22 situation where you need experience to get a job, and a lot of job descriptions will say 3 years, 5 years, whatever, 10 years experience in a particular technology, language, role, whatever, but you need the job to get the experience. And that can feel like an insurmountable barrier at times. And I think this is one of the areas, particularly if you're early stage transitioning, moving between sectors, volunteering can be a great way to demonstrate experience, not immediately in the sector you're moving into. And I'll just explain a little bit about that. And it comes down to a couple of areas. There are some general areas which can be demonstrated across almost any volunteering and be applicable actually to any job you're going into. This is not an exclusive list. You will find others, but thinking particularly about our clubs, these are the kinds of things that I would anticipate you could use as examples of experience if you don't have a work profile or work history to use for that. And a lot of them seem quite trivial. Timekeeping. Our clubs run every evening between 6 and 7 o'clock. Folks have to turn up a little bit early to set up. As an employer, it's quite important, particularly if you're looking at an office-based employment to know that people are going to turn up on time and be around. If you have a role that is in any way public or customer facing, you may need to be available on call between certain hours. The ability to do that, to manage your diary, your time, is a good confidence boost for a potential employer to say, okay, this person is going to be there because they've been volunteering at this club for the last year and they've been there on time every time. And that's something they would check with their references, but it gives the employer confidence that, yeah, this person is trustworthy. They're going to turn up. Commitment. As I said, making a job offer to an employee is a big commitment on a business. And there's an expectation of reciprocal commitment that you as the employee will be coming along and turning up every time. Our clubs run every week, including the school. I should have said school holidays, not holidays. It is important that if you have holidays, you take them for your own personal mental health. They're there for a reason. And I'm not good at that, but it's an important point. This is something also with volunteering, is to take breaks. So even if the clubs, the volunteering activity runs throughout the year, you should not feel pressured to be there throughout the year. You also need breaks in your volunteering. But regular commitment, volunteering for a year, giving an hour of your time each week, is a great way to demonstrate to a company, potential employer, that you're good at keeping time, but you're also willing to make a commitment for the longer term. And that gives them the confidence around, with two candidates of equal paper experience, these are the sorts of things that will tip the balance in favor of one person over another equally qualified person. Responsibility is a big one that you will get with volunteering. When I first moved to Bristol as a project manager, no, I wasn't a project manager, I was a project something, on an innovation project. I wanted to move up to the next stage and take on more of a leadership role within the team. But in my professional career, I'd always been a project activity person, going out visiting companies, doing stuff, but never with any line management or formal responsibility. But I volunteered with a sailing charity. So I was able to put down on my application form that I was a qualified sailor, ship's captain, taking a ship of 20 people, cross-channel open ocean sailing, with a first mate reporting to me, 2 watch officers, 4 watch leaders, and whatever the remaining number of that is, crew members. And I was legally responsible for their lives at sea. That's a very particular example, but it showed to the university that I was capable of taking responsibility far above where I was currently working on their pay structure. Within our clubs, all of our volunteers have an enhanced DBS check, which is the police disclosure and barring service. And that's a fairly simple police check for a criminal record, any outstanding records. And it shows that, that shows you have a clean record, but it's things like alert for signs of abuse and neglect, taking responsibility for those young people under your care during the time on that club. An employer would see that, be able to translate that into the workplace and say, okay, they could take responsibility for a team or a larger project than perhaps being a junior developer, taking orders from somebody else and just working to somebody else's brief all the time. It's all very quiet. Is everybody okay? I haven't got, because I've got my screen up. I can't see the chat or anything else, so I don't know if everybody's still.
Everybody's saying they're here, they're listening.
Well, please check in, because this is the more interactive, the better. Well, yeah. So admin is another example. A lot of people, myself included, don't enjoy admin, but with our clubs, we need to record attendance, and hand out badges as evidence of achievement. So for an employer looking to take on a junior developer, the fact that you are regularly updating a CRM system, a cloud-based system with attendance data or comments or documentation, again, that's probably above and beyond what you would normally see from a boot camp on Python, for example. And doing it on a regular basis, so it's not something that you start and then kind of forget about because it gets a bit boring. It's something that you, in our instance, we do at every club session so that everybody uses the system. We know who's there. For us, it's about safeguarding and fire regs, but as a building your career, it demonstrates that kind of regular commitment, engagement, keeping the system going. Businesses work on processes. Being able to use the process is an important one in giving the company the confidence that you're going to deliver on whatever it is they're asking you to do. And of course, the other big one is around leadership and mentoring. Mentoring we'll talk about a little bit more in the interactive session. Hopefully, we'll have an interactive. But volunteering is a great way to take a leadership role, either running a club. You've got 10 young people, you're leading that team of young people as a learning group, or maybe you're doing an outward bound and you're taking them for a walk across the moorland or the heathers, or you're canoeing on a river or something, or maybe you've got a group of young people and you're building a bridge or some gardening activity. All of that is leadership, and that soft mentoring skill demonstrated through your volunteering that you can then say to an employer, I can run a team, I can lead people, I can help develop other people. Maybe my role isn't the junior developer, maybe it's the senior developer or whatever their interim job titles are. So you can use that and describe how you take a soft leadership role within a volunteering capacity. The leadership in volunteering tends to be a lot more soft leadership, servant leadership, because of course you're not paid to do the job, so you don't have any direct control over the people there. But equally, you are in a leadership role because you're either the adult to the young people, or you're leading the activity in some way, supporting those people that you're volunteering for. And of course, there'll be lots of others. So those you can apply almost anywhere in your volunteering, and you can draw them from any volunteering, as I said, whether it's outward bounds or gardening, or you could be helping with like one of the food cycle kitchens that's feeding people and using discarded food material. You might be helping to lead the kitchen, or even leading what would be called front of house with serving. That's all good experience that you can say to a potential employer, this is what I do in my other time, and it demonstrates that I have capabilities that are valuable to your business. But you can also pull some specifics out, and this is more around the technical stuff. So we're actually going to do a little bit of this later on, but you can demonstrate client requirements analysis. Very common in software consulting. But I was in a club a few weeks ago. One of our young people, Finn, wasn't getting on, clearly not getting on. So I sat down with him. I quite often go to the clubs as kind of the backup and logistics. I take the laptops around. The volunteers run the club. I sit to one side. But if there's 10 young people and 2 volunteers and they're engaged and somebody's looking a bit grumpy, I'll wander over and just say hello and we'll try and figure out what's going on. Finn looking a bit grumpy, so we had a bit of a chat. He had a game idea sort of that he wanted to build, but he wasn't really sure what it was. He knew it had some buttons down here and there was a thing up here and there was all this, but he hadn't really described in a way that could be converted into code what he wanted to do. So we sat down, we talked it through, and after a few minutes we had the basic framework for an idle clicker game where you click a button, a value goes up. When the value gets to a certain point, you can then purchase auto clicker elements, and the value would then go down, and it would then automatically increase the value, and the price would go up each time. So basically idle clicker, if any of you have seen those on your mobile phones, this is what he actually wanted to build. But he didn't describe it as a series of tasks and activities and functions and methods. He described it as a series of buttons on the screen that he wanted to see. That's a really good requirements analysis exercise. That's my experience. You will find others. The critical thing here is I didn't go into the club looking for an example of client requirements analysis and then find Finn. I was volunteering, helping the club out, and this is what happened. These kinds of specific experiences are probably going to be best captured after the event. Maybe make a note of them if you're like that. Keep them in the back of your mental filing cabinet, and then when you get to an interview, using your general volunteering experience to secure the interview, then when they talk about when we do requirements analysis, blah blah, you say, oh yeah, well no, this is my experience of doing that. We had a client, young person, had a bit of an issue, wasn't quite sure how to describe it. I was able to break it down into a series of steps, and they were then able to carry on and produce their game. It's a lot harder. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I was going to just say that actually one of the things we do with people that have gone through our boot camps is talk about the STAR process. So situation, task, I can't remember what the A is, and result, achievement or result, something like that, or activities and result. And that, what John just described is a really good example of, if you keep a kind of list in that format, you can use volunteering to kind of give those kinds of examples when you're in interviews.
And that's a fantastic framework to use. And it means that you'll be able to structure your examples using a common framework, which will make it a lot easier for you to remember the example and how it relates to the context. It will also demonstrate to potential employers that you have a really good logical analytical mind that can construct these things. So I like that style. It's a really good one. There are lots of them out there. That sounds like a really useful one for explaining and structuring that process. Another example, again, very common in industry, code reviews. You've probably done them as part of your boot camps. I think, is it boot camps CBF run coding programs?
Yeah, we run boot camps and introductory courses. And thanks, Adi Kemi. She said it's action is the A word.
Action, of course it is. Yep. I know when I was years ago, in engineering, we use something called the Deming cycle: plan, do, check, act. And it's that same sort of thing. Code reviews. Yes. So code reviews. All companies use code reviews. Lots of different ways of doing them. If you're not in industry, it can be quite artificial sometimes in the boot camp setting to do code reviews, because you're kind of just working as a team with your classmates, your colleagues. But in a club environment, you have, let's call them a junior developer, young person. In this instance, different club, different young person, Amaris, about to hand a work in. We set our clubs up in kind of like a ring with tables in the middle, young people sitting around the outside, volunteers walking around the outside of them. So the young people are all facing in, which means when they look up, they see another young person rather than a blank wall. It also makes it easier for the volunteers to keep everybody in view. They've never really got their back to the class or the group. So it's easy to keep an eye on how people are doing. And I'd been wandering around and I'd noticed that Amaris's game wasn't quite behaving the way I knew it was supposed to from the guide. And she was about to hand it in because I've done it, I've finished it. So we sat down and I just asked her to go through it, and it didn't behave as it was supposed to. So again, just getting her to go through the game logic, explain what should be happening, what she was expecting to happen at each stage, and then reflecting on what was actually happening as a very simple problem solving mechanism for an 8-year-old, and then just reviewing why that wasn't behaving as she expected it to happen, and checking back to the guide and the project and the code blocks in the guide, and we figured out, okay, this is where it's gone wrong, this is how we could fix it, and we moved a few things around so it's a little easier for her to understand, and actually she had some ideas, she wanted it to do something a little bit different, so we could talk through, okay, well, this was the written guide idea, you want it to do this extra bit, so how do we add this extra bit in? Okay, that's reasonable, and off we go. Again, I didn't go into the club session thinking, right, I need to get a code review example. It was just a young person had an issue, you use it up, you solve it, you log it in the back of your mind using your framework. And then when it comes to that interview question, how do you perform in code reviews? Oh, well, it's a couple of weeks ago, I'm asked, blah, 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 and you start to recount it. And these examples will, sometimes they'll come thick and fast. Some sessions will be bang, 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 challenges, problems, solutions, all going off. Some sessions will be really quiet. In our example, young people follow project guides, so it's quite self-directed. And there can be sessions where 10 kids will turn up, they'll sign in, they'll get onto the computers, they'll start working away, and then 50 minutes later, they all start saving their stuff, and they all sign out, and they go away, and hardly anyone said anything. It's like, is everybody still okay? Yeah, okay. And so then the volunteers have a chat between themselves, and we'll come on to that a bit later. So sometimes it can seem like it's not going very well. In fact, from a charity perspective, that's fantastic, because those are now self-directed learning agents taking control of their own development, educational development. And I know from other sessions that if things do go wrong, they do stick their hands up and they do ask. So it's not like they're just sitting quiet and hoping nobody notices them. They are progressing. From a volunteering perspective, it's a bit more challenging because doesn't seem like there's a lot to do, but you will pick up these things, these activities, and they're all really good ways of demonstrating to potential employers that you have capability, demonstrable capability, beyond perhaps what shows up in your CV. The general stuff is a lot easier to throw into a CV document because they tend to be more pro forma. Companies tend to have either a standard template they want you to fill out, or there are templates that people will use to construct their CV. And these sorts of things are often harder to introduce because of word limits. But in a interview context, whether it's in person or online, they're really good ways of fleshing out the breadth and depth of your knowledge and experience to a potential employer who's looking for someone to just slot into their organization, pick up some work activity, contribute back some skills, and also be developed within the organization rather than just being a 3-month sticking plaster. So there's lots of ways of building demonstrable experience. Are there any questions, queries, comments? How am I doing on speed, timing?
Yeah, all looks
complexity?
good to me. There's no questions. Unless people have questions, put your hands up if you've got a question, or examples of where you've volunteered and had that kind of experience of being able to use it in careers. That would be great too. Has anybody had that experience? And also, we get asked so many times, how do we break into the tech world? And this is exactly a great strategy. So Amalia is asking, what is the best way to find volunteering opportunities?
Brilliant question. The best, so there's a couple of good ways, and there are a couple of links at the end of the slide deck I've got here with specifics. So there's an organization called STEM Learning who manage a national contract to support STEM, science, technology, engineering, maths, STEM volunteers. They don't they don't actively place you, but you can register as a STEM volunteer. They will do a bit of an introduction, background. This is particularly for kids. Bit of a background to working with young people, school system. Safeguarding is a big issue. They're very keen on that, very hot on that. They will also, as part of their funding, do an enhanced DBS check for you for free, which you can then use in your volunteering. Once you get your enhanced DBS, there's an online update service that the government manages, which is free for volunteers. So you can register that, and then you have what is effectively an evergreen enhanced DBS that you can take to any volunteering organization that requires one and say, here's my certificate number, here's my date of birth, here's my last name, go away, check that I'm still clear, and then that just takes away all that pain. So from a legal side, that's one of the key requirements for working particularly with young people. The other part of what STEM Learning have is a directory of volunteering opportunities. So once you're registered, once you're on the system, you can look through your area and see who's running code clubs, science jams, chemical festivals, all kinds of stuff, reading, writing, math exercises. A lot of them, for historical reasons, tend to be school-based, both in terms of location and time. So they tend to be at sort of 3 o'clock in the afternoon during term time, which can be really difficult for a lot of people. They also tend to be term time, not throughout the year. So my personal gripe is that those holiday periods are where particularly young people get dropped, missed, lose interest in technology, lose interest in clubs, or get poached by, let's say, less positive activities. Being able to keep them engaged through the holiday periods for us is a really important part of what the charity does, because it gives them a regular positive space where they can engage in code without having to worry about peer pressure or other things going on in their community. So that's a personal aside. STEM Learning is a really good place to find volunteering activities. I would also say, quick plug, DigiLocal, we host online clubs as well as in-person clubs. So if you're based in the UK, you're brilliant, fantastic, we love you. If you're based overseas, then we also love you. We actually have a volunteer in China. He uses a complicated series of VPNs and other things that I don't want to know about to join our club sessions. But he did his enhanced DBS here. He's still valid. So the online world is now an amazing place for volunteering because you're not restricted to your local geography. You can volunteer literally anywhere. But yeah.
Yeah, so that was exactly Sharon's question. Is it possible to volunteer online? I'm not based in the UK, which is good. Just so great you answered that. And then Amalia, who I think is in Argentina, is that right? Is also said just brilliant and had a chuckle at the the VPN tricks.
There's always a way. If you're motivated to volunteer, there's always a way in. And if you are overseas, then your starting point would probably be a Google search. You may find that there's something similar to STEM Learning in your area, or talk to your local schools. From the English experience, the UK experience, schools are desperate for people to come in and do science technology clubs for them. One of the big challenges, and I don't think this is unique to the UK, is that a lot of particularly primary school teachers are not technology background, so they are not very well equipped professionally to do technology teaching in school, and often the schools themselves are not very well equipped, sometimes from a hardware perspective, to do that. So there's lots of opportunity there.
That's great. And we've got another question: is how do I get opportunities in cybersecurity? Is there any volunteering there?
Oh, cyber.
Mm.
Well, to the extent that cyber just means online, yes, lots. In terms of security,
Security bit.
the security side of things,
Mm.
yes, it's a little bit trickier from a youth perspective because a lot of it is inherently quite complicated mathematics. And that's a challenge in a 1 hour session once a week to get a young person up to speed where they can cope with some of that mathematics or indeed infrastructure to be able to do something interesting in a 1 hour. Then you come back the next week and they've forgotten everything. There are some things you can do. So the NCSC is your starting point for that. National Cybersecurity Centre, Cheltenham, just up the road from me. They have a range of resources for schools engagement, education around cyber and security. There is I'm going to say fantastic. It has a few caveats. They have a program called Cyber First, I think it is, which is specifically for girls to encourage them to get into cyber. And it takes the form of I think it's a month or 2-month challenge competition. You have to be a school to register. I believe there are fees involved, but there are ways around that. Unfortunately, it tends to be dominated by the private schools because they can throw the extra resource at the young girls. The state sector doesn't do so well because they don't have the resource to support them, which is why we're volunteering to help do that. Those would be my 2 starting points. And NCSC in particular, have a look at their website, see what's going on. If all else fails, make your own up. We've got a couple of, so even in something as simple as Scratch, which we're going to come on to right about now, in fact, we've got a simple Caesar cipher, so letter replacement. We've also got a Vigenère cipher, so using a passphrase to do the letter replacement. That can be done in Scratch quite easily. It's great fun. It helps the kids understand some of the very basic contexts of encryption. We've also got a password generator, which randomly takes 3 or 4 words and jumbles them up into a nonsensical phrase as a password, because picking passwords is difficult. People are very good at remembering phrases. Computers are very good at cracking random lists of letters. So we've kind of got a bit out of step there. So you can do little projects like that. You can make your own up. I would completely encourage you to have a think about how you would build a project to explain or engage with a particular topic of cybersecurity. If you can gamify it, turn it into a bit of a challenge or a game, that's brilliant, because what works, particularly with younger people, probably with adults as well actually, is a very quick reinforcement loop. So if you can build something that gives them something that happens within the first few minutes, then they get that sense of achievement, they get a little dopamine hit, they're motivated to carry on and do the next bit where it gets a bit more complicated. It works, they get a dopamine hit, they move on to the next bit, blah, 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 rinse and repeat. You're using that cycle in a positive way to enforce the fact that, hey, this is cool, this is interesting, and I can do it. If you throw them straight into an SHA 256 algorithm, you're just going to get blank looks. And quite frankly, I'm going to look at you blankly as well, because
Yeah.
that's hardcore. But there are some good resources out there. Another good one on the cyber front, actually, more on the what's the word I'm looking for? Shopping, online shopping and cybersecurity around transactions, is the OWASP, OWSAP, Open Web Standards, something. Do a search on Google. They have a fantastic Juice Shop application. It is proudly described by them as the most advanced insecure web shopping application in the world. And it comes with a whole host of challenges around getting passwords into a system through SQL injections, through faking credit cards, but all in a very secure way, with a high score table and everything. And that goes from just looking at the HTML page to figure out where the high score table is and unlocking that, right the way up to some proper white hat, grey hat stuff that is, I don't even understand the challenge question, let alone the solution. So cyber is a big one. I mean, the other big one that's coming through will be AI. And again, the challenge there is exposing enough of the AI coding theory, without calling it that, of how this stuff works, so that they're not simply,
Explainability, isn't it? Is that what you mean? Is it that?
yeah, strip it. I mean, so one of the things we've done a lot of is we use gaming to build code, because kids like playing games, young people like games, and it's a great way of doing interactions. It's a great way of doing loops and tests and all that kind of stuff. We've stuck with fairly simple 2D stuff in Python, even though most games are developed 3D in C++, because a lot of those games are developed on things like Unreal Engine or Unity, which actually, unless you're working at the very top end, do a huge amount of the work for you. You don't realize what the framework is doing. So being able to show them this is how complicated it is just to draw a circle on the screen is brilliant, because making a circle appear on the screen is kind of cool. And then you can make the circle move, and then you can do other stuff. The same goes with AI. We have an example using very simple decision tree logic to predict if an animal is a predator or not. And it uses SciPy, and it uses some simple branching logic. And that you can do. When they start talking about ChatGPT, it's kind of like, oh, you do realize that was several thousand billion data points in text over many thousands of GPUs burning many kilowatts of power over several months of training to produce that model. It's very hard to explain that in a way that an 8-year-old can understand on a laptop. But yes, if anybody cracks that, please do get in touch with me, because seriously, it would be amazing.
Yeah, doing it with kind of like quicker and easier and less power. Malia said, do you mind repeating the name of this resource? I've missed it. So I think it was the OWASP juice shop.
OWASP.
The OWASP. I'm sorry, OWASP juice shop. But and I think it was NCSE was the
NCSC.
NCSC. Oh, C again.
National Cyber Security Centre.
Yeah.
Those are the folks up in Cheltenham.
Yeah.
And then OWASP is the, and I've just gone to their page now. It's the, oh, they've gone away.
Yeah.
What does it actually stand for? Did I say somewhere? It's gone. But yeah, OWASP Foundation do the juice shop. And they're fantastic. They've got some great resources on there. Okay.
So I just wanted to give you a time check to help. It's just about 23 minutes past 7.
Yep. Brilliant. Does anybody need a comfort stop now, or shall we dive into the interactive bit? And you are going to have to be interactive on this one. You're going to have to talk to me. Or at least through
through chat. Yeah. So I think maybe should we take a 5-minute break, just take 5 minutes off camera, and then come back to do the activity.
Yep, I'm happy with that.
Yeah, let's do that then. And so everybody back at let's say 7:30. I'll put that in the chat.
Brilliant.
And I'll put those other resources in there too.
Yeah, I'm just linking OWASP because that's
yeah, that'll be good. Oh, good. I was just about to put that in there. That's great.
I will just drop off camera for 5 seconds and
Yeah.
be back then.
Brilliant, brilliant. Everybody back?
Yep, we're here.
Good, good. I can see you. So put in the chat if you're back. Oh, somebody said no
I've just-
sound. All right, okay. No, here, yeah,
I
here,
think
here,
yeah,
here.
you're muted.
Yeah.
I like how in the chat, because I've got my name then brackets DigiLocal, my little icon is J bracket.
Yeah.
Got to figure out a better way of doing that.
That's funny. I noticed that.
And I haven't figured out how to get my profile picture in Zoom. Never mind.
Mm.
We use Google Meet as part of the Google
Yeah,
Workspace platform.
no, I think it's good as well. I like Google Meet too, but I think it's because of the other systems.
Yeah.
Okay, the other systems that are involved in the background, of lots of little bits of automation.
There are.
Yeah. So I think we got people back. So it's now a chance to do a bit of
Interaction. Right. So when I share my screen, I lose the view of all of you and the chat. So Mariam's going to have to relay, unless please do.
Yeah, hands
pop your
up
mics
and you
up.
can, yeah, and you can speak.
Just call out. So for the purposes of this, let's go back to share screen. Don't do that. Chrome tab, that one there, and that one there. Right. So for the purposes of this next little bit, this is going to be practical skills, demonstrable practical skills in a club environment. So I'm now an 8-year-old. Hard to believe. I was once. And this is one of our projects. So this is Scratch. I'm not expecting any of you to have used Scratch because it's designed for young people. Massachusetts Institute of Technology had a huge funding pot a while back, and they developed this interface specifically for 8 to 12-year-olds. And if you get involved in any particularly youth-orientated coding in a range of contexts, it will probably look like this because they've all nicked the idea, the design and layout, because it works and it's very, very good. We use it because it's a free online web resource, and it's fantastic for that reason as well. So this is an example from our project guides. It's something that we get the kids, the young people, to do when they first join and they've never done any coding before. And the concept is to make a cat run across the screen, jump into a rocket ship flies through space, lands on an alien planet, and then we can do some stuff from there. In the guide, there is a point at which things go a bit wrong. It happens all the time. We don't take it out because actually it's a very good learning experience for the young people to think about the logic and flow of a piece of code. Usually you'll realize they've got to that point because a plaintive voice will come up and say, my cat's disappeared, my rocket ship's gone, everything's vanished. So the question is, I put to you as coding experts, why is the cat and the rocket ship? Because if I click the green flag, nothing seems to happen. I don't know if you can see my code. If I just zoom in a bit.
Yeah,
so
I can see it. Yeah.
There's my cat code. So each of these can be highlighted and you can see the code on. And it looks like I've got some code there that's on the rocket ship. But when I click the green flag, I can't see my cat. So who's got some ideas as to where my cat's gone?
Has anybody got any ideas? Has anybody else used Scratch? Everyone's gone quiet now. Now you got to solve the problem. Where are you all?
Go on. Because in a club context, you've got a little person there who's going, where's my cat gone?
Where's my cat? I haven't used Scratch. I don't see Sprite 1 specified from Naya. Sprite 1 needs specified.
So there's Sprite 1 is the cat. And the cat has this code. So when the green flag is clicked, go to X, Y coordinate, then glide, move smoothly to X, Y coordinate, then hide, then broadcast takeoff, which is an internal event system that Scratch has. And then the rocket ship, when the green flag is clicked, switches its costume to one of the costumes that it has. So we have some costumes here, and it switches to costume E, which is this one. And then it goes to an XY coordinate. And then when I receive takeoff, which was the broadcast from the cat, I switch costume, I glide to a different coordinate, and then I hide. And when I click the green flag, I can't see anything.
So does anybody have any clue what to do next? Oh, it doesn't look like. So I'm talking away and muting myself at the same time. It wasn't very clever. Ivana said, I've tried it before in CS50. I think she means Scratch, because I think it's part of, I think it's a Harvard course, online course. So I'm not sure. We might, I don't think, how about I ask if anybody's got experience of using Scratch?
It's okay. It's less a Scratch question,
yeah,
and more a logical sequence question. So if I go to this one, what's the logical sequence? And the thing to realize here is Scratch maintains state after you finished, and when you start it, it will start state the same as it left the end state unless you tell it otherwise. So the sequence is when the green flag is clicked, we go to X minus 150, Y minus 120. Then we glide for 1 second to X 100, Y minus 120. So we're staying on the same Y value. Then we hide, then we broadcast takeoff.
So
the last thing we did was to hide the cat.
Yeah, I was going to say,
There you go, see now.
Yeah, because I did get it, but I was like thinking, is it just that it's hidden?
It's just that it's hidden.
Okay.
So we've got so here's the hide block, and just above it is a show block. So if we put now, what young people will often do is put it there. And then what will happen is your cat will appear. And if they click really quickly,
spaceship all gone.
Well, the spaceship, but also our cat is still there. I think the spaceship's left off. We want to see the cat at the beginning of our code and have it hidden at the end of the code. So now the cat behaves. So now, how do we fix our code here?
Yeah. Okay. So suddenly I'm gonna have to try to do it by myself. I need other people to help.
Come on, folks, dive in. This is interactivity.
You need to add show.
Where?
Where? Yeah, where? You kind of left a space, so I'm kind of guessing that's where.
You mean up here?
Yeah.
So these don't actually join up together. You can
Oh no. Okay. No.
But possibly for the wrong reason, it's the correct answer. Because we want. So what we're trying to do is get the young people to think about their starting conditions. So when they start a program, make sure all your starting variables, all your starting conditions are as you expect them to be, so that when you click the green flag, the rocket ship takes off. And if you click it again, off it goes, and it'll do the same thing every single time.
Yeah. So we Naya's suggesting you need to add show under go to X or
Perfect.
under green flag, maybe
Perfect.
she said, but she got it right.
Yep. It can. So this is a bit this is a bit more scratch than a bit more than volunteering and this kind of stuff. I tend to put the show there rather than up here, because particularly if you're on a slightly slower computer, you can sometimes see these blocks activate if it's shown, whereas if it's hidden, we do all our motion, then we show. But logically, that's the place to put it. So our rocket ship appears, takes off, it hides. We've got a happy kid. Yay, my cat's flying. And away we go.
I'm not sure if it is fine. It's just gone into space.
It's a happy cat.
Is that normal?
Going on well, it's how the Russians started. I'm not quite sure that cat got back in one piece. We'll gloss over that. But for me,
it was a dog.
Laika was the first dog in space. I think they may have sent a few other animals up first. I think there was there was at least a cat. I think they sent rabbits, and eventually a monkey went up. But
I didn't know a cat went to space. Now we know.
Oh, cats in space. There's a TV program in there somewhere. Anyway, so the point is, what we're doing is we're going through that problem-solving loop with, in this instance, me as the young person, but in a club setting, you would get a distraught young person and you're trying to work out what's gone wrong, or at least what isn't behaving as they expect. And from that, try and elicit what should have happened and come up with some mitigating actions. Exactly the same process you would go with a client. So even if you're not in a explicitly client-facing role, you have to deal with project managers, you have to deal with business managers who are bringing information back from the client. You're then working at one extra step removed from the client, young person, but you're still having to go through that exercise. This is relatable back into the world of work. This is what we're doing. So we've got our cat working. Everything's flying along. Everybody's happy. Brilliant. Right. So if we then carry on. Well done, Naya. No, that was a good solution, Naya. Excellent. So we did that. So now what we want to do is we want to go to our next project. So that the young person's been working away. We've advanced our activity, and hopefully this is going to work without breaking. Yes. And now we are at the next stage. So now we've got an extra backdrop. So on our stage, I'll just show you how all this works so you understand what's going on. We actually have three backdrops. We've got a blank one, which is the default. We've got the desert where we started, and we've got this colorful spacey one, which is where we're going to fly through space. We've also added an extra sprite, which is our planet. So this is where our rocket ship is going to fly towards. So we've still got our cat, we've still got our rocket ship, we've now got an extra planet. We've got some extra code, although not on the cat, because the cat's still... Oh, I did my code slightly differently. I put my show between the blocks instead of at the top. That's okay. And this is the great thing with working with young people, is you're not in a regulated environment, so your code doesn't have to meet the highest standards of reproducibility or robustness. It's usually enough that it works. It allows you to go through the problem-solving loop a lot quicker, and it allows for more flexibility in solutions. One of the challenges, and this is a little bit more about DigiLocal than volunteering in general, but one of the challenges we have sometimes is getting people to see it as mentoring, not teaching. And if the young person produces code that doesn't look exactly like the guide, that's not a problem, as long as they figured it out. And if they put their show there, that's fine. If they put their show, it's all happening there, that's also fine. Functionally, it's the same.
So it's that kind of sense of getting them thinking for themselves and testing it. And actually one of the big things is just getting people to experiment, isn't it?
Yep.
And try for themselves. People don't like to when they're very new.
Exactly.
And that's why I'm going to encourage everybody else to get involved.
Please do.
It's okay to get
Mariam's
it
done really
wrong.
well. No, it's done really well. Come on, somebody else can. So here we have, so this is the next stage. And, oh, hang on. So what we should be doing is flying to the planet. But we've got a couple things going wrong here. Our rocket ship's on its side. It's not getting to the planet. And it keeps getting smaller. Okay. So the cat seems okay because it's doing what it should do, and we haven't changed that code. Our rocket ship now has some more code. Zoom in a bit. Okay. So who wants to start throw in ideas as to why our rocket ship isn't behaving? Any thoughts on chat? Come on, don't make Mariam do all the work.
Yeah, I need other people to help. What's the answer? What do we do with the spaceship? Yeah, people are saying they don't have experience of coding at the moment.
It's not so much coding; it's problem solving.
Yeah.
So break it down into problems. We've got a couple of problems. Our rocket ship is pointing in a funny direction. It's not going to the planet, and it keeps getting smaller. So so we've got 3 problems there.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So this is the rocket. So it's going pointing to, yeah. Not the degree of what degrees it's turning, is it? So, or but there's a change size block as well, isn't there? So,
yes.
And
so
there's
that's making it get smaller.
Block. Yeah. So
okay. So hang on, let's do one thing at a time. So we're making it get smaller each time we run our code. So just in the same way as we wanted to make it come back, we want it to be full size at the start. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes good.
Right. So if we want to make it full size at the start, we can set our size. So in the same way as we've got change size, we've got a block that says set size. So if we set our size back to 100% at the start, there we go.
There you go.
So what's the next problem we want to do?
And Namisha has said she agrees because Naya said it could be the repeat block. And so 2 people think there's something up with the repeat block.
Excellent. No, this is excellent. So what's up with the repeat block? What do you think's not quite going right there?
Yeah.
So that's working fine, but our rocket ship's only going that far. How do we get the rocket ship all the way to the planet?
So you need some kind of like end one, something about kind of a destination or something. I don't know where to go. I don't know what you could do with this code.
Well, so in this instance, all the code you need is here.
So maybe it just needs to repeat more. Not quickly enough to get there. More repeats.
That sounds good. Okay, so let's do 20. And that was a bit better. It went a bit further that time, I think.
Yeah. So it's a lot more than, say, I don't know, 80.
80. Let's try 80.
see if we can overshoot for a bit.
And ooh, might actually need a bit more than that.
Yeah, it's like gambling now, isn't it? A kind of like we've got 120, we've got 100. Maybe let's see what people think is going to be the
What do
target
people
number.
think? What was that? 120?
120, 110, 120, 110.
So it seemed to be settling around 110, 120.
Oh,
I
gone a
think
bit far.
that overshot slightly.
Yeah.
Let's come back to 110. And this is exactly the way we do it in clubs. Get the young person to experiment with the code and see what, oh, we're kind of on the ring there.
Nearly then,
So maybe we don't need to go.
115. Oh, no, Misha's cheated. She's asked her 8-year-old son who's obsessed with Scratch.
What does he say? Come on. This is brilliant. What does he say?
What's his answer? He says 100. 100, she says. He says 100.
Your kid is a genius.
Unnatural.
Look at that. Ah, that.
Well
Extra
done.
points for the
He says thank you.
There is actually.
We did it.
There's a bit of a clue in the code. Young people never pick up on this, but our size is 100%, and we're changing our size by -1% each time. So if you reduce it by 100, it will go down to effectively 0. It will never get any smaller.
No, of course not. That makes sense when you see it.
But that's
sorry,
it.
I've turned my camera off.
The reason. So the reason I showed you that example in particular is because the default block is 10. So they'll drag this one over. They'll use, and this relates to people using libraries and code from the internet in particular, is they'll just import the default and they'll use it, and then they'll wonder why things don't behave as expected. And you have to think through what it's actually doing. So again, thinking back to an employer situation, using libraries, using resources online is fantastic, but you have to be able to go through the process of understanding what it does to be able to make it work in your specific context. And this is a great example where you can talk through working with a young person to say they had some code, they used the default, it wasn't behaving. We were able to go through a problem-solving exercise to get our rocket ship to behave. Right. So for our genius 8-year-old, how do I get my rocket ship to stand up at the start of my get animation?
Yeah, and also Naima, they said, "Woo, we did it." Oh, and then she said,
Yes.
"Oh, maths." Like that.
Maths comes into coding quite a lot.
Yeah, so we now need to get it to stand up.
We need to get it to stand up because when we start our animation, it's pointing off in a weird direction. Well, it's pointing towards the planet, but we want it to stand upright. And I'll go to the section that has the answer. Can you see
so you've got these turning pieces, so you can turn it by a number of degrees. Is that the rocket ship you can turn, or is it something else?
Yep,
it's sprite. Oh, okay. I'll rotate it. So Narisha says rotate it. Rotate 45 degrees. That's Sarah.
Any other takers? Let's see. So we're pointing.
Yeah, which way?
So we want to rotate anti-clockwise.
Yeah, okay.
So we want to rotate anti-clockwise, 45 degrees. Let's see if that works. Ah!
Yeah, we did it again. Kind of. Oh yeah, Sarah said
Yeah.
rotate 45 degrees, but yeah, it was the anti-clockwise, so it's nice. No, Naya says nice. That's great.
But hold on. Can you see this block here?
Yep, it says direction and it says 88, I think.
So we're not actually pointing straight up.
Oh,
We're tipped over slightly.
so we need a few more.
Well,
Oh, what do we
there
do
is.
now?
You're in exactly the right area. In the guide, it has this block here, which sets you in a particular direction. So you can set a fixed number, and if you set it to 90, then it doesn't matter where your planet goes.
I see. So you start it kind of pointing upwards and then you set the direction once it takes off.
I need to set direction, not minus 75.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
And the reason we use the point and direction 90 rather than an undo rotation is quite often young people will put this somewhere else, and so if it's there,
You just
pull
change
that away.
change the target.
Then it will point in the right. It won't go in the right place because that's hard coded the XYZ, and you could code it to work out the difference in X, the difference in Y, divide by 100 and move that. But this is the first project they do when they get to the club, so this is more than enough to hit them with.
Yeah, plenty. I think
so there we go. So now
CS50 was easier than this.
this is what we give them to do on the first week. And
okay, you got genius ones. You got genius children.
We got genius kid in young person. That's who we need, the 8-year-old. And again, it's that problem solving loop of saying, what is it I want to achieve? Largely language independent. You can describe what you want to happen, and yes, turn anti-clockwise. What is 45 took us to 88 degrees. So if we did, which way do we want to go? 43.
Another 2 or something.
Well, we turned
so you need
too
another
far.
12. So you need another 12.
You reckon 12? So
add 12 or minus 12. I can't. But actually, Sharon's made the connection. So she's saying this game is to understand the thought process of coding, but not actually learn to code in a programming language.
Exactly.
In a funny way, Scratch is now a language. In a funny way, you could call it a language, or not? Would you not call it a language?
I would call it a language, but it's far enough removed from VS Code, Python, JavaScript that you. So this is more about DigiLocal as a charity. We try and plow the middle ground between schools teaching and organizations offering training like CBFD. If you're teaching, you've got a curriculum, you need everybody to move at the same pace, they all need to get to the end to do their exams, and you have a right and wrong answer to every question. If you're training, you're preparing people for a specific place of work with a set of tools and expectations and industry standards. We try and sit in the middle, and I think most volunteering organizations in any area, actually, whether or not it's coding or gardening or outdoors activities, will try and sit in the middle where it's more about education and exactly those thinking skills in the slightly abstract that you can then apply to Python or Rust or Java or whatever your language of choice is going to be, because most of them, and I say with hesitation because functional languages do work slightly differently, most of them will have loops. They'll have methods and functions that are kind of like your own blocks. they will have event calls. So you'll recognize stuff, even though the words change. But it gives you that problem solving, that thinking skill to be able to go, I want my rocket ship to go from here to here, and it's not doing it. Why? It's because I haven't done enough loops.
The other thing about this, the other thing that's really good about this is this idea of pseudocode,
Yes.
and a really good way of providing comments as well, so that you're an important part of working in a team of coders is to be able to put comments into the code so that people know what the aim of your code or a block of code is. And this is a good way of learning the kinds of things ways of saying what the code is doing. So it's almost teaches the kind of pseudocode or commenting process as well.
Interestingly, and also the partner to good commenting is writing good legible code in the first place. One of the things we will occasionally see is young people doing things like this, and you're then faced with which, oh, hang on, no, hang on, just you've got as okay, so now we've got no idea what's going on because they've just mashed the keyboard and created a variable, a broadcast that the computer knows what's going on, but I've got, if I click it now, is it still going to, oh, no, there you go. So giving your variables and function calls sensible names is as good, if not better, than commenting your code.
Yeah, but people are saying the variable name is stressing me out. No, that's messy. Stop.
Exactly. It is, but it's so often because young people are wonderful. They live absolutely in the moment, and taking the time to write the word takeoff is so long. It's so much effort. I just go and away it goes. Then they're faced with the next week. They've got to come back and say, okay, so why is which of these is my takeoff code? Which of these is my landing code? I've got no idea. So it's, and I've now lost my other message because in space. So yeah, trying to get young people to in space broad. No, I've lost the thread now. What was I doing? Takeoff. That's what I wanted to do. Takeoff. Right, and our cat then takes off. Okay. Order has been restored. Phew. Yeah, so again, a certain amount of rigor in the documentation and actually in the code design naming conventions. You'll notice
the same. Naya's saying the variable names need to be simple and clear and tell you what it's for.
Exactly. And it's so, and in the commercial world, it's a huge thing. You'll notice I use Snakecase because I'm a Python learned. And that's what we try and encourage the young people to use, just because the next stage for them is to go into Python. So we try to keep as much of it consistent from scratch into Python as we can. You can use any naming convention that takes your fancy in here. Scratch doesn't care, but it's useful to have some consistency. And if you're running a volunteering group or you're running a club as a volunteer, then your own consistent approach is incredibly useful to the young people because it becomes a point of reference for them, a point of stability. And something we noticed, particularly over COVID, was a lot of those points of stability were lost. And so the volunteering club activity actually became part fun activity, but also social connection, social contact, social support in the softest way. So as volunteers, it's a great way to see those young people develop from their first project, getting the rocket ship to take off, right the way through to advanced stuff in Python. And
Brilliant.
we go on.
I was just wondering, do you have it so that the students that have gone through the whole course then help volunteer? Do you then encourage them back in to help with
Yes.
the younger ones? Oh,
Oh,
brilliant.
yes.
Oh,
That's fantastic.
brilliant.
So there's two elements to that. One is, yes, that's fantastic, amazing. And we now have 6 young people who volunteer. 2 are now 16. So they actually have their own enhanced DBS that we've done for them. You have to be 18 through STEM learning. So we've actually set up a contract with a third-party agency to do for them at age 16. So they are full volunteers in their own right. And in fact, the club session we had running this evening was hosted by a youth volunteer at 6 o'clock. They're fantastic, but they don't have the depth of experience that a professional developer has or engineer has. And so they're only able to mentor from the gap between where they are now and where they were 4 or 5 years ago. One of the key concepts for us as a charity for DigiLocal is that we bring in the volunteers from industry who can, first of all, show young people what an engineer actually looks like, because most of them won't have seen one or won't know one, and they've only got the black hoodie hacker on the TV screen to go by, and that's not always a positive image. Or the white male Facebook executive, again, not necessarily a positive role model. So showing them different faces of what engineers can look like is really important, and bringing that experience in from the workplace to the club allows them to see that, okay, this is a bit of fun, what we're doing here with the rocket ships and cats and ghosts and mazes and stuff. But the language that's being used is the language that you would use in a software engineering world when you talk about variables and constants and method naming and event triggers. Those are things that most engineers would recognize in a variety of different languages. They're implemented differently, but conceptually, if you want to, you can view Scratch as an object-oriented, event-driven coding language. That's what it is fundamentally. In fact, if you look underneath, it's JavaScript. So all the pretty boxes eventually get converted down to JavaScript, and that's what actually runs in the background.
So you're using Python style when it's JavaScript, really.
It's actually JavaScript, yeah.
Oh, well.
But, I don't do JavaScript, so I stick to Python. But this is when you're doing your volunteering, these experiences of helping young people go through that thinking process are the experiences that you can hold internally. And when you are at an interview stage or talking to another engineer about what you do and how you get on and how you solve problems, if you don't have that industry experience, that industry background yet, you can relate some of these, anonymize them obviously for data privacy and safeguarding, but you can talk about the same concepts and principles, and without naming a language, you will have a common understanding of what's going on. The next bit I was going to do is to extend it a bit further, because the final version that we have in the guide is not much longer, but if I just drop that in there and then add that and that, and so loads the project up. There you go. So the extension is we take off, we fly through space. We've now got a little animation, so the rocket ship spins around as we fly through space. So this is adding code to our rocket ship, so that now, instead of just moving for 100 steps, we've also got an if then else statement that does the costume changing. And then we've got another bit of animation to do the landing. And that's the end of the project guide. What we then do is we say to the young people, okay, what happens next? Over to you. and they can then add bits on. They can talk to the volunteers and start to come up with their own ideas, and then go through the process of, okay, well, how would you make the cat come back, add an alien, do a dialogue conversation with them. But it's an opportunity for the young person then to put their own stamp on what is otherwise quite a generic animation. Some will start earlier. So we've had quite a few where it's not a planet, it's a watermelon, it's not a cat, it's something else, and it's not a rocket ship, it's a puppy dog, goodness knows what. And that's all fantastic because they're playing with the code, they're playing with the language. They may move things around, so instead of going that way, it goes the other way across the screen. So that means they've got to understand how the XY coordinate system works. They may have stop-offs. One of the young people had the rocket ship stop halfway through and had a conversation with itself and then carried on. Okay, that's cool.
They come up with.
It is. And as a volunteer, that's fantastic because then you're actually really using your skills to help them translate those customer requirements into some code and also manage their learning and mentor their thinking process along the way. So those are the times when you can see the volunteers really get engaged, and sometimes you have to sort of step back and keep an eye on the other because you've got 10 young people in the room, and if you're spending all your time with one because they've got this really cool idea, you don't want to exclude the others. But it is fantastic when those moments do come through.
Fantastic. I can see it's rewarding. Yeah, definitely.
And yes, so that's the end of that project. I don't know if we really want us nearly quarter past. Okay. We'll draw a line under the interactive fun session and carry on with the discursive fun session. So each of those steps come from points in an actual volunteering session. That thinking process is the one you want to go through both professionally with clients and with young people, and that's how you can sort of bring the two across, use your professional skills to help young people, but also take those experiences with young people and relate them back to solve a problem. One of the other challenges, particularly in certain sectors, it can be very difficult to relate what you do at work to a future employer because you may become.
Yeah, it's just breaking up a little bit, but it may be just Wi-Fi issues. Sometimes that happens. It's happening for quite a while now. Oh, I think we've lost John. John, if it may be that you may need to kind of log out and come back in again because it looks like you've frozen. I'm not sure if you can hear me, but there's a problem. John seems to be on the call. John, can you hear me? Maybe put a message in the chat, but you're frozen on the screen. Okay. So, what's the main things you've learned so far? Let's all have a chat while we. Yeah. So John's just gone, and I'm sure he'll be back. Oh yeah, you're back. Great. Yeah. I think
sorry, did I drop off?
Yeah, you just dropped off for a bit, and the screen stopped sharing. Right, I think it was a Wi-Fi problem because at first, for a little while, you were speeding up and slowing down, and then it just froze.
Right. Okay. Let me share screen again and see if everything holds together. Am I still here?
Yeah, you're still good. You're good.
Okay.
Yeah, you're back to the you're back maybe where you just shifted to the other presentation. That can happen sometimes.
That could be what confused things.
Yeah.
Yes, so we did problem solving skills, and as I was saying, when you're volunteering, you are effectively the lead developer for that team of junior developers. Depending on how the club you're in works, they may all be working on the same project, moving in step. Our clubs, young people start all the time throughout the year, so they're all working on different stuff at different levels. Some will be in Python, some will be in Scratch, so it's a much more dynamic environment, which will relate completely to the workplace, where you'll have sub teams and individuals working on elements of a larger project, and you've got to try and pull that together. So there's lots of stuff in there, particularly on those soft skills. So how do you relate to people? How do you get them to communicate to you? How do you communicate with them? It's a good way of practicing some of those mentoring, probing, question skills. Mercifully, we haven't had too many emotional meltdowns in our clubs. People do get passionate about their games, but usually the volunteers are fantastic at bringing that down. But again, you may find that you've got a particularly challenging situation to deal with. Hopefully your volunteering organization will support you in that. The good ones will, certainly. And that is all feedstock for your conversation with a future employer to say what a fantastic person you are and why they should be picking you. So we were going to have a break. We've had a quick break. Is everyone okay for the last 15 minutes if we just pile in?
And talk. Oh,
yeah, let's go. Networking.
Yeah, good. Yeah.
So the last little thing I was going to say about how volunteering can build your employability, develop your career, is around networking. Because this is something that quite often comes up in reasons for volunteering and can I use it to get a job? And the answer is yes, with some caveats. So I would describe this as soft networking. If you've been to speed networking events and a lot of business facing networking events, you go in with a big stack of business cards and you've got a pitch in your head of what it is you do and what you want to get a job in, and you go around the room, you talk to everybody you can find, you give them a card, you do your 10-second pitch, and you listen to their 10-second pitch, you take a card from them, move on to the next person you go around, and by the end of the evening, utterly exhausted, but you've got a big stack of business cards you then check through. That's not the way to approach networking in volunteering, certainly not in the UK tech scene, where most of the people you're going to be encountering are going to be other engineers and developers, not hiring managers. So you're engaging with them as equals. And so what I would say in this sort of section is the first thing is you have to be present. And this goes back to the reason you're there is to support the group that you are volunteering for, whether it's young people, older people, different backgrounds, whatever. You're there as a volunteer to support them. And if you start to focus out on something else, getting a job or making a particular connection, you're neglecting the group that you should be supporting, the reason you're there. That will get back, that will go wrong, it will all go badly from that point on. So throughout all of it, you must be present on the purpose, the reason you're there. The benefits then come from the quiet times, the down times, setup, breakdown, the bits around the edges, the bits in between. There can be a lot of those, but if you go into it trying to do the extra bits and that doesn't work, you're setting yourself up for failure. If you go into it for the purpose of supporting, giving your time freely for the benefit of others, then you will succeed in doing that and have a fantastic experience. And you can also gain useful connections in the industry. And breaking into an industry like tech or cyber or whatever can be quite difficult. This is a good way of doing it gently and maybe not as quickly, but it can be used. So the other thing I would say is listen to the other volunteers before you start talking to them. I mean, obviously talk to the volunteers, but listen to them. Most industries, most sectors have their own language, way of speaking, phraseology, buzz phrases, things they're talking about. You can pick a lot of that up just through the conversation with the other volunteers if they're also from similar industries. So if you're at a cyber club and you've got somebody from a company that deals in cyber, or you've got someone who's a security expert, they will have a particular way of phrasing things that will be slightly different to somebody maybe who comes from a big data background or is a data scientist or other areas. And you can start to pick up on some of those things and listen to how they approach problem solving, because they will have background and experience from those companies that will be different to the way it was presented at your boot camp or your training sessions. Both are valid, both are useful. If you're comfortable with the one you've been using through CBF and other packages, then use that, but be aware of how the local industry describes what they do, because then when you get to interview, remember all this is about getting that career opportunity, you can use the framework that you're comfortable with, the STAR framework, but drop in the occasional phrase that you've heard the other volunteers use, as long as it's in context, and that will then be familiar to the interviewer, to the hiring managers. And again, it's about giving them confidence that you're a good person to come into the industry, come into their company. Their commitment, their offer to you is going to be valued and return benefit to the company. As well as listening, talk to your other volunteers. I should say talk to the other, my English there is very poor, I apologize. Talk to your other volunteers. Talk to the other volunteers. Talk to your co-volunteers. Some combination of words in there. Anyway, talk to them. Everybody's there to support other people. And in my experience, most volunteers extend that to their co-volunteers. So have a chat with them. They're lovely people generally. They're there because they want to help young people as well, or whatever group you're working with. So, don't be afraid to say hello to them. And this is what I'm saying. Discuss different approaches to specific problems. The young people are going to throw up all sorts of specific problems. There may be an example in the guide if you're working to a guide. They may be freestyling it, and you've got to think off the top of your head how you'd solve that problem. And that can be a great opportunity to say, oh, Aisha, just how would you do this? Or I've done this before, but they're trying to do something a bit different. What are your thoughts on this? Or maybe you'll see another volunteer doing something and you go, how did you do that, Mohammed? Oh, okay, that was interesting. Brilliant. I can use that. We have our guides written as Google Docs, so they're completely editable by the volunteers. Doesn't happen a lot, but every now and again, one of them will come up with a slightly different way of doing things. And it's like, yeah, okay, that's kind of interesting. That's cool. Okay, let's change the guide, tweak it a little bit, and just add that bit in. And it will give you an opportunity to learn from your co-volunteers, understand how different industries approach challenges, and share your idea, and maybe show to the co-volunteers, okay, this person's got some interesting problem solving skills. They could be useful. And what you're trying to do is build links so that when your co-volunteers know that the company they're in is hiring, they would say to you, oh, you want to check out our job page because we've got some opportunities coming up. You're not selling yourself to them. You're letting them make you aware of the opportunity. It's a bit soft and reverse process. Another cool way of doing this is to ask them about their side projects. Everybody in the engineering world is working on a side project. Not a side hustle, just a side project. They may be interested in 3D animation or gaming, and they're playing around with some game engine, or maybe they're teaching themselves Rust because it's the new darling on the block. So yeah, how's that Rust project going on? Oh, okay, yeah, okay. And how are you handling the API lookup calls or something like that? I don't know. Getting them to talk about what they do shows you're interested. You can then also think about that and maybe offer them thoughts and comments, demonstrating your knowledge and expertise. It may flag up an area of developing technology that would be worth exploring. And if you're not already fully committed to a particular language, then you're in a really good position to try out some of these new languages like Rust and Go and others. And maybe that's an area where you can differentiate yourself by saying, oh yeah, and check out my GitHub profile because I've got a whole bunch of stuff in these extra languages where I've built little projects, or the kids have come up with ideas and I've been able to demonstrate how these things work. And share what you're working on. So when you're talking, don't be afraid to talk about your side projects. They don't have to work. In fact, it's more interesting if they don't work, because then you can talk about what's not working and how you're trying to fix it. And then the other engineers, developers in the volunteering community will go, oh, this is how I do it. This is how you do it. Okay, well, maybe try that. And you're building that rapport and relationship with them through their companies, to see you as somebody that's interesting, competent, doing cool stuff. So when those opportunities come up, maybe the team they're on, somebody moves on or they're expanding and you're a person they've got contact with. I would not say you will get a job directly, but you will find out about opportunities that maybe don't hit the job pages or aren't directly targeted to you. You can find out about them in advance. It's about making opportunities for you to then apply to, rather than waiting for Indeed or whatever to push stuff to your email. Oh yeah, sorry. How do I go back? How do I go back? I can't go back. I need to go back. No,
if you,
that's
I think if you press on the side of the,
it's Google Docs. It's a bit
Google
weird.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there. So
show what you're working on. Right.
Oh, there was a question actually. What is the name of the game in Scratch that we just played or tried to play? Okay.
So,
it's a game you made up.
Yes. So that was an animation called Journey to the Stars. It's based loosely on a Code Club project from 10 years ago or more. I think it was also called Journey to the Stars, as a first introduction to Scratch. So we've updated it with the latest version of Scratch and a few other bits and pieces. We've changed how some of the code works, because Code Club was an initiative from the government many years ago. Really good, slightly used the functionality of Scratch in a lazy way. So we've moved it to be a little bit more akin to a formal coding language. We've only got a couple of minutes left. So there's a quick plug for us, charity, and those are the links. So
is it possible to copy those into the chat so people can click on them, or we can send them out if easy? But if it's easy to, you might need to close and start open again. And while you're doing that, I'll also put in our events for other people wanting to come to any of our other events. But if and Sarah, you've asked to go back a slide to the previous slide. Do you still want that? Yes, please. So yeah, if you could go back a slide. Oh no, we've disrupted everything. So John's disappeared again briefly. Yeah. No, well, these things happen sometimes. Well, at least you've all got time to write down his name, haven't you? You've got no excuses for not being able to get that contact details.
Ah,
Oh, you're back. We're just saying, yeah,
have rubbish internet on the one evening he needs it.
yeah,
Did my post appear? Yes.
yeah. So it's just the slide before somebody wanted to get hold of, just to see, and then whether you could post those links. You might be able to just cut and paste them into the
Yeah.
chat.
So the links to DigiLocal and STEM should be in the chat.
Oh no, I don't think they unless oh yeah, they are now. They're there. They're there. That's good.
There you go.
Yeah, they're there. And then I
They're
think there was just, if you could just share one more time, I think the slide before the one with the somebody wanted to have a quick look at that. The second to last slide.
The penultimate slide. Let's come back down.
That's the word, penultimate.
Right, let's go.
Yeah.
Oh, it's all loading back in. I closed a few tabs because I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
Oh, that was our website.
Yeah.
Right. So share, Chrome tab, career building.
Brilliant.
Yeah. So it was just our front slide.
Yeah.
In fact, so these are the three areas that the charity engages. We do some laptop repurposing, and then we have our online and in-person clubs. And actually, Bakato, who's pictured there, she was an attendee at one of our clubs for a few years. Then she left over COVID and her A-levels. She's now second year computer science with cybersecurity at Gloucester University.
Yeah.
And she's also a trustee at the charity.
Fantastic.
So technically she is my boss, which is fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. But yeah, so that's and those are some pictures of our clubs and some of our young people on I think both of those are actually donated laptops on our projects. So that's kind of what we do.
This has been absolutely such a fun session, and yeah, absolutely encourage everybody to, for so many reasons, to kind of engage with DigiLocal and other opportunities to volunteer for yourself, but also for others, because it as you can see, it makes a really big difference. And a really big thank you to John and for everybody engaging and answering questions. It's been brilliant. Thank you.
And do drop me an email if you've got any general questions, or just get involved in volunteering. It is fantastic. I would say that I'm biased, but you will get a lot out of it.
Thank you.
Amazing.
Yeah,
everybody.
yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, people are really pleased. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, John from Faye. Thank you from Naya. Thank you from Sharon. Inspiring session.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's great. Really great.
Wonderful.
Oh, two more messages. Yeah, Sabrina, thank you. And thank you so much for sharing, John. Yeah.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah,
genuinely.
and more. Thank you. Yeah.
Right, come on, everybody.
Okay.
It's
yeah.
time for dinner.
Yeah, no time to go. Thank you so much. I'm going to end the call now. Bye for now.
Bye all. Take care.